right, you guys
So
ready?
we're ready?
Oh, sorry.
2:05, I'm calling this meeting to order.
Thank you.
The sixth meeting of the wastewater treatment plant Contingency Committee. And we have a quorum, but just barely. In attendance are ex officio Tim Ritzer, myself, Barbara Purvis, the chair. Mark Prouty is out. Bob Heffernan is here. Sumner is here and Donna is here. Daphne, hopefully will be joining us, not today, but soon.
It looks like
And
Austin's on.
Austin is joining remotely and I don't know what
Yeah.
happened. So
Can you hear me?
where we are. First,
You're not on mute.
Yeah, I think I am.
That's your problem.
All right, so what, yes, Madam Chair.
okay, first on the agenda is review and approval of the minutes. Did anyone send any comments to Sharon? No.
Nope.
Did anyone read the minutes? All right.
I trust that they're.
Daphne said she would read them. But
But she doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to give her some background. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a
As
motion to
amended?
approve the minutes.
We're gonna make a motion to send it to the board to approve.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
I
okay.
make a motion to send it to the board to
Send each one,
Yes.
the 21st, the
Wait,
29th,
so-
approve, and then
call it out.
That's sort of tricky. They won't have any idea whether they're right or wrong because they weren't here.
But that's
It's
the
for
way it
record.
goes. It's the way
okay,
it
I
goes.
make a motion to approve and send to the board
Right there.
the August 21st minutes.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I can't vote, I'm sorry.
Meetings will-
But I'm
I make a motion to approve the August 29th minutes.
Second that as well.
All
Aye.
in favor?
I,
Austin? We're not hearing anything from Austin.
He said his service is spotty, but he was texting me.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
I make a motion to approve the September 12th minutes.
I'll second that as well.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So those minutes will be sent to the board for their approval. Next on the agenda was the meeting that Sumner and I had with Bill Ullman and Andrew Wozniak. And we met with them to kind of pick their brains about thoughts about discharge of the treated effluent and where might be possible places where it would be better to discharge it than to the canal. And yeah, and we talked first about the wetlands that are adjacent, and they were not very positive on that idea. As yeah, no real surprise, but you know, we talked about whether that could help to hold back saltwater intrusion. And they said, even if we injected it below ground, it would probably cause problems in the wetlands, including proliferation of phragmites.
That was one of the more interesting things we learned.
Yes.
was
Because of the nitrogen?
No,
Because of the fresh water.
fresh
By
water.
putting more fresh water in there, it selects more heavily toward Phragmites versus Spartina.
So by changing the salinity,
Yep.
it makes it more
Changes the preferred species. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Where you at?
yeah. So that was disappointing, but they had some other ideas. And
good.
one of the ideas was across the street from Freeman Highway,
You can
From
quote
the,
up on
yeah.
the map, sure.
from the wastewater treatment plant, and
Basically that
forested area there.
same area that we were flying around in one of the last meetings.
yes, wondering whether that might be a suitable place for moving a new facility. And they thought it might be good for, spray irrigation. You know, putting those heads, the heads, if we could bring up the spray irrigation head from the Berlin
Mhm.
thing,
Right.
putting heads like that in amongst the forested area over there, you know, laying pipeline. And doing spray irrigation there, and they said, you know, that would help, the fresh water would be helpful there. And certainly it's mostly sand, so you'll get good infiltration. And, you know, they didn't know all what studies would be needed to do it and all what approvals, but it liked from a scientific standpoint, they supported that.
I think the other thing was that the reason they were talking about that area is because it was high enough that there was a thickness of soil that was still unsaturated. That would be able to accommodate that water,
Yeah.
rather
above the
than
water
dumping
table.
it in a saturated zone.
Right,
We learned when we were out here at this site with Mark, because he was instrumental in this construction, just how maintenance free this kind of installation is. Which is beneficial for the operational costs of running something like that.
yeah,
I'm just,
That's not as
because I didn't get to
important.
go on the tour, I'm assuming this is what they were imagining doing in the second round at Wolf Neck.
I'm imagining that
Mhm.
too, yeah.
Are you familiar with this kind of?
I am, one of the requirements that they would always look at, and I'm sure with the area you're talking about, you would get it, is that you have 2 feet separation
Yes, Yeah.
to seasonal high groundwater.
A standard infiltration base.
So is
Yeah.
this kind of separation in the vertical?
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
Huh,
And the area that we were moving around and we were imagining, there's at least 2 feet.
yes.
There's a
For
lot.
seasonal high.
Yeah.
For six
Yeah.
months.
Okay.
So that's a possibility, you know, we still have the canal and BDF permit, but, you know, if that effluent could do some good somewhere.
Now, it's,
and the
it's-
idea, oh, I'm sorry, go
it's
ahead.
probably worth mentioning, we talked about a lot of other things.
Yes.
And one of the things that was most interesting was the opportunity for better partnerships with the city, the BPW, between, you know, those two entities and the university. There's a lot of intellectual capital over there that those guys felt like wasn't really being fully tapped.
Right,
And I think they were excited about the possibility of finding ways to work together a little more. There was a sort of a sidebar conversation, because Bill Ullman, you know, was retired University of Delaware professor of geology and geochemistry. He was involved, I think, on the siting of the Wolf Neck facility
Right.
way back when, but he
Right.
also was pretty heavily involved in the whole process regarding the Rehoboth
Ocean outfall.
ocean outfall. And it'd be worth verifying this, but he made it sound like that ocean outfall is very specifically located in that spot because it's the perfect place for the currents to not create some sort of feedback toward the beach. It's the place where you can put
interesting,
effluent and it
moves
goes
out,
out rather than circulates back towards the beach and gets stuck in some sort of a gyre. He wasn't so confident there would be another place to do that. He said it was literally the best spot along the beach. I can't go any further than that, but that was
Right.
that was kind of an eye-opening comment.
What kind of person does that kind of research to know that? Is that was in Bill's area, I don't believe, Dr. Ullman.
I think somewhere along the way, I mean, I think you get oceanographers involved. You've got to look at the way the water's moving,
Mhm.
both laterally and vertically, in order to figure that out.
And that never changes, I mean.
It will
Constantly
change. So within water resources engineering, you'll have specialities that deal with shoreline, people that deal looking at just assimilation studies for this type of discharge.
Interesting,
Yeah.
Right, and that's, I think, one of the things that Hans has been
thank you.
saying is, this won't be an easy task. One, politically, but two, it'll be very expensive to get
Well,
some of the stuff-
typically
stuff.
and then this is years ago, because I've been out of, that field for a long time, but years ago it was a 2-year mandatory study on shoreline discharge for assimilation studies.
Hmm.
So,
Oh, we got that.
Now, I don't know, how much the technology for ocean discharge has changed in terms of whether they create vortices or something by the way they pump it out, that may change that evaluation. I don't know. But, whether they'll get approval, where they'll be able to locate it, it's gonna be a while. And as you said, we talked about a lot of other things, and one of the things that they held out on this cooperation with the city and all was if we decide, if we get the go ahead that this is something we need to look into deeper, to try and get they would help us with people to get involved in Sea Grant. They said would probably coordinate that. We could have some meetings with them and find the right people to help us frame the questions and the studies that would be needed. So
this might not be in the right place to ask it, but I was thinking about when you were gonna have your meeting. And I don't know if it was looked at, but when they looked at the option of hardening up the existing facility, did they look at the option of a split discharge, maintaining the existing canal discharge and then doing something like spray irrigation?
they didn't look at it, but I think it's an interesting thing to be looked at in the future.
So can I ask for a little more there? So you're
Yeah.
imagining, so the idea is, rather than put more load, say, in the canal. That if we have to put, if we have more demand to get rid of effluent per unit time.
Right,
That we could take whatever the additional stuff from what we currently do and stick it in an irrigation scheme or something like that.
Right.
well, since I was home with that terrible cold, which is why I missed the meeting, I had time to read about the options that had been presented and the materials I had, and so we're only looking at this high seasonal load that we're trying to expand the facility for, not the normal load.
Right.
So why not use the footprint that's there, harden up that facility, expand it, and then when the need is there, split the discharge between spray irrigation and the canal, leave the current NPDES permit in place.
Mhm.
Because getting the new NPDES permit is a huge task into itself. People tend to, like industries, commercial industries, manufacturing industries, will tend to, when they expand, leave their current NPDES permit in place. They don't want to lose it.
Right,
That's like something
That's
in the
gold.
bank, right?
right.
So why not leave it in place
think
and then
it's
look
really-
at spray irrigation for the expansion?
Right, so it's not all or nothing on
Yeah.
one technology.
Right,
Right.
You bifurcate the,
And
That's-
really,
And that makes sense
Suffolk was
anyway.
looking at that as well. They were looking at using our permit for discharge or transferring it to them for discharge to the canal while they were maturing their constructed wetlands in the original option 3 thing. It wasn't gonna be stopped, immediately. We can handle everything in the constructed wetlands.
right, I mean, to your point, that, most of the other discharges in this watershed have been removed because of nutrient TMDLs. So this is kind of gold.
yeah, I don't think the city wants to give up that permit, at least. If I was the consultant on it, that would be, setting my initial parameters down, that would be one of my first.
Keep your hands off that one. What's the acreage of this parcel that I know that our friend Sharon's gonna hold up? So we can see it on the screen. And
I mean, Tim, I don't, first of all, it's one huge parcel that's owned by the state.
right,
I think what would really be more important is how much of the land there's a whole line of discussion that would have to happen in order to make that move forward.
I understand.
But only some of that parcel would really probably be suitable for the kind of activity that we're talking about here.
And
I-
the GHD study said that we would need 250 acres for spray irrigation.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's for the full capacity of a new facility.
Without,
Yes,
That's
as
what's
well,
the
as
thing
well.
you just said,
Yes,
right?
so in effect, what you'd be looking for is just your base amount, which would be understood to be going into the canal, and then it'd be that overage is what would possibly be used for the spray irrigation. Is that correct?
So for example, if.
I might
if-
describe it right.
If we didn't just.
Interesting.
So if we
I like
didn't,
what you're
if
thinking.
Lewis was to forge ahead with option
One.
one of the option one.
yeah,
And it were to realize its full maximum beyond what we're currently discharging. Say you cap the discharge into the canal at the, say, 1 million gallons per day, and whatever is beyond that would be through some sort of spare irrigation thing, which would require, I'm assuming, a lot less land
Right,
than what
Yes.
3.5 million gallons worth. whatever
that's what
the
I'm
number was,
thinking too.
would require.
It's 6.73 acres.
Over on that, on the other side of Freeman?
This one right here?
No.
No,
no, no.
that
it's on the,
it'll go- it just go
east.
left. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that-
right there,
Oh, that's all.
789 acres.
Yeah,
Right, but that's like most of the park.
yeah, but what about the part that's within the city boundaries? You see where that dotted line was? No, no, no.
I don't think I doubt it's calculated that way.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I wonder if you could see.
Well,
where the
there's that
line-
dotted line I
Yeah.
think you're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Josh could figure it out pretty quickly, or I could
20
help her
acres.
figure it out.
45 acres, something like that.
which dotted line?
Okay, so just to give an estimate, how big is the
That-
Howard
that
Seymour
one.
parcel?
Oh, this right here.
Yeah,
That was like an acre.
Dash.
What, how big is the Howard Seymour parcel?
6 acres.
6.73, yeah.
So that's, I don't know. Well, that's, what is it, 789 acres? I'm not sure that is 789 acres. Maybe it is.
I-
That doesn't seem right.
I
No,
thought the
no,
park
no.
was 600 and some acres, keep him open.
Well, over here is,
I think the park is.
yeah,
thousands of
it's
acres.
separate, I think.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Anyway,
So,
could-
so, I mean,
So
you know,
it's-
you'd have to look at, elevation
Yeah.
and hydrology in order to figure out how much of that land is suitable and all that. kind of
Right,
stuff.
But then the other option they came up with was discharged to the bay.
Oh, yeah.
and you
I forgot
spoke to
about
Bill about that and the
Yes.
other gentleman, uh-huh.
They were the ones that came up with the thought. But it said, you know, if you discharge into the bay,
The Delaware Bay?
the
Mhm.
Delaware
Okay.
Bay. There are some perfect conditions, only a few hundred meters off shoreline.
So basically, you know, I think that part of the conversation built off of that comment that Bill made about sort of perfect flow situation over at Deauville Beach where Rehoboth is discharging.
Mhm.
And he said, you know, frankly, you just need enough turbulence.
Yeah.
And you need enough depth. And I think as we were talking, he was talking about basically, it's still a couple of miles. I mean,
He
it's
said a few hundred meters. He said,
Off the
go
shore,
northeast beyond the breakwater. He said the bay there is light limited, it's opaque. So you wouldn't have a problem with production of seagrass or anything with the nutrients going in there.
can you just pan down?
Mhm.
No,
So
so the-
it would, there's a great
breakwater
mixing
is
zone there.
I wanna go.
Right, so there's, I was looking for the walls and they may not be on the map.
It's focused on the land. It's not focused on the water.
Right,
Okay, okay.
that's
Why
right.
are we highlighted though?
Yeah,
There we go. Alright,
is there a satellite view, like a layer or a base map?
If you-
You could change the base map to a satellite, the orange buttons there, there you go. Right, ESRI base maps. And then just hit one of the imagery ones. That's fine. And you should be able to X out of that and then get the, if we pan down now. See the wall out there.
Yeah.
So I guess what Bill was talking about is if you pan down Sharon so that
Mhm.
we
Yeah,
can
look at
see
the
Lewes.
The other way.
The bay.
No, other
The other
way,
way,
other
yeah.
way. Yeah, there you go. Keep going.
Keep going.
So about where the color changes,
Yeah,
I think is probably what Bill was talking about. There's a couple of rips out there. The water gets a little deeper. I'm assuming the breakwater he was talking about, it may have been the Cape Henlope and the Cape May Lewes Ferry one that you can see
yeah.
right there,
Mhm.
just to the left of where it says Cape Henlope Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Here.
That white
You
line.
don't think he
Here.
meant the
Yeah.
outer breakwater?
Well, I don't know what he was talking about, but if it's a couple hundred meters, it was at least out here, but it may have been out here.
It may have
And just
been,
from
yeah,
having
yeah.
boated around out here, there's definitely a drop off in here. You know, we didn't talk about detailed depth
Yeah.
requirements.
Right, right.
But I would imagine it would need to be out in here somewhere. I mean, and when you get out here,
Well, I mean,
you
that
guys
makes
know where
some
the ice,
sense, because you get a tide
right?
twice a day. You could pump out during it's going out
Right.
period. And
Great idea.
Do you know where the icebreakers are? I think they're out here. And,
Are they
and
that
out
far
there,
out?
there's a big drop off beyond that, but I'm pretty sure they're out there. They're not here. They're out there.
Right.
I just don't know what the, actual current requirements are to make that assimilation
Right.
happen. But he was just saying,
Yeah.
he was imagining, and I think it would have to be verified a bunch of different ways, that he felt like there was enough current, and because of the light limitation, I've forgotten about that.
Yes, yeah.
We wouldn't have to worry about nutrients causing algal blooms, seagrass blooms, whatever it might be.
Oh,
There would be
interesting.
the opportunity. Politically, I think it would be challenging. Everybody looking out
To
from
drop the pipe out
their
there?
perch on Lewis Beach. But it's,
Well,
something to,
Given the fact that they have closed Lewis Beach because of nutrient loadings when we have these big rainfalls. And that's nothing but stormwater coming off the land.
So you're
Well-
saying that this would be a real risk then?
I think politically, I don't think scientifically,
right,
but
in
politically, I
fact-
think it would be hard.
but in fact, we're putting discharge in the canal, so that water's out there anyway.
Right.
And
Right.
So I don't remember
And
any
it-
more details. They're
And
probably sharing here.
if you're piping out far out, is the current?
Right.
Is it moving whatever's being delivered to the end of that pipe? Is it moving it out farther into the
That's-
bay?
That's
And
the hope, yeah,
but that hasn't been, we don't know that for sure yet, right?
no, but I think that was why he was saying that. He was sort of operating from a first level analysis saying,
Right.
you need to get out beyond a certain depth where there's a little more volume of water
Right.
and there's a little more current
Okay,
that will assimilate the
Yeah.
treated effluent more effectively than in close to shore.
right,
And
interesting.
How long is the Rehoboth thing? It's a long way, right?
I don't know.
I think it's
I-
thousands of meters.
For some reason, I
it's
think
about a
it is
mile.
two,
I think,
like 2 miles, is it that
Oh,
I
far?
was gonna
Well,
say
mile-
6,000 speed, but.
Okay.
um,
Uh,
Well, they just drop a pipe, right?
Right, and is that actually, is buried or is it
I think they just drop it.
just drop it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh, interesting. Well, it's nice to know these options exist.
Yeah, yeah, possibly.
Right, I mean, politically, there would be challenges.
Yeah.
I have no idea, and we didn't really talk specifically about what kind of appetite DENREC, for example, would have on that front.
Right.
I don't know.
Would they actually
but-
have a say on that?
I think
Is
so.
that far out in the,
I think
Yeah.
so.
they do?
You're
Uh,
like-
this,
you're
the,
looking at another
the,
permit.
it's Delaware water. The Delaware waters go at least halfway out to the middle of the bay, not most of the way across, like
Has
Further
that
up the
actually
Delaware.
settled between Delaware and Jersey?
Well, on the way up further in the Delaware Bay, the water, the state line is all the way over basically by the Jersey side. I don't know where it is up down here.
Disputed, under disputed?
Yeah, it's.
Isn't it
kind of-
disputed? Or has that been settled?
I think it's been
Well, like-
settled. There's even a little piece of what you would think of as New Jersey is Delaware
Right,
up there.
right. But I think regardless, I don't think it's an easy lift.
Okay,
And given the conversations we had with all the people at the DenRec people that we wandered around and talked with at Coast Day. Nobody's really, I mean, this is a public meeting. Nobody seemed really keen on trying to try new things.
yeah, well, that's, yeah, I'm not sure what that's about.
Predictable.
Yeah,
Not
I mean,
surprising. I mean,
talk about political animals.
you know, why would you do that and risk being in the newspaper a year later?
But I will leave you with this. They felt like there were missed opportunities for just this kind of, I'll call it innovation for lack of a better term. From their scientific perspective,
We're talking about Bill.
the university guys,
Uh-huh.
there were opportunities to make better use. It all started with the comment that Mark made. I don't remember which meeting it was, where he said, it's such a waste not to further squeeze nutrients out of this wastewater before it goes into the ground or into the ocean. And, we shouldn't just be, quote, I think he said this, we shouldn't just be dumping it in the canal.
Right,
And that's how I remember you getting interested in the wetland
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
But they were pretty clear that wasn't something they saw working.
no, you're right.
And that was the primary objective of that meeting, was to evaluate that.
To evaluate, yes, is that definitely I should drop all thoughts of.
what else did you all discuss? It sounds like a very interesting meeting.
Oh, it was. Bill gave us lots of names for people we could follow up with. Andrew said he would send us some things, but he hasn't.
I assume he would expect us to reach out and say, hey, we want to go to the next level, but I
Yeah.
don't think we're able to do that.
No, I don't think we are either. I think that would be, after we hear back from the board, after we submit a report to them. But, it's enticing that they would like to be involved. Now, I'm sure they wouldn't do it all for free, but, they were expressing frustration that they're not more involved with coastal issues, given the proximity,
Mhm.
city coastal issues.
And the wealth of experience and knowledge that's there in
Yes.
building.
And Bill showed up at one of our, the next week or so, he showed up at one of the environmental subcommittee meetings.
He did. He's very interested in the whole Phragmites issue. And
So,
yeah,
okay, well, what do we do? Go from there to the next item or?
yes. Next item is discussion about the Aqua Narita presentation on October 23rd. So.
I'm interested to hear what you guys thought.
You can really talk fast.
Oh, really? So,
The representative.
Yes.
Paul Adorn. Paul Adorn
It
did
was a
almost
great
all-
tour.
Hmm?
I thought it was a great tour.
Well, we're talking about two different things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Aqua Narita.
Right, Aqua Arena, I apologize. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I was really waiting for Mark's view, and of course, Austin got called out a couple of times during to answer the phone during the presentation, so I was disappointed about that. Did you get to listen? No, you just weren't. Yeah, you were out of it. Okay. So, I was a little disappointed in their presentation because I had originally sent aerials of the wastewater treatment plant to them, hoping they could, when in their presentation, they could talk about, yeah, you could fit our stuff in here and, whatever the footprint works. And they claim they didn't receive them, so I went back in my emails and I did send it to Joe Tardio, but it's way back when, and I guess he didn't send Bob, but. They did go on a tour of the plant beforehand, and they seemed optimistic that, yeah, there's enough space here, but how it would be configured is another question. And they said they would get back to us about that. Austin sent some schematics. And I forget what else. And I checked with Austin today and, he has not heard back from them, but they're supposed to be getting back to us. They gave us a cost estimate for their equipment. I thought it included the tanks, but it did not. And their estimate was $2,822,000 for the.
So 3 million.
Yeah, basically 3 million for the Aqua Marita
I
equipment.
have another.
And for the filter system, the 2 4-disc cloth media filters. Like what we saw in,
Berlin.
Right.
in Berlin,
Berlin,
Yeah.
right.
2 of them though, instead of just the one that they had. That would be around 500,000. So we're looking at about 3.5 million plus the tanks.
Any idea how
And
much
doing it,
tanks
and
would
the
cost?
construction and doing it and.
Yes,
No, that's just their equipment, right? That's not construction.
that's
Right.
right, right. Right.
Right.
An engineer cost.
Engine.
I didn't think. it was
Donna, what is
included.
your experience with respect to the relationship of construction costs to material costs? Is there a relationship, I mean, multiplier or nothing?
Not that I know of, no.
Nothing, okay,
Well, you could easily spend 10 million on this stuff.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Let's see.
Same with engineering.
I don't think the engineering was included either.
Includes
No.
freight,
I'm surprised it would.
installation supervision, and startup services.
Right,
Okay, but
so,
There's the
So-
design and
well, there,
Alright.
I don't think there's a lot of engineering costs if they've got their system down,
Right.
but you have the engineering cost of. You know, how are you maintaining the existing system while the new one goes into
Yes.
place and. You know, what temporary measures do you have to put in place? Is it, you know,
And it's complicated.
yeah, is it extra tanks? Is it extra pumps? Is it?
did you guys
The
talk
other-
about
The other thing that was in here was, at least in my notes, was we talked about a third tank. Okay, and then the other thing that they sort of said was these tanks as described are sort of their optimal. You know, they can make them, their arms or whatever to be longer or narrower, long or wider, but these tank sizes are real convenient for that. So
wait, these tanks meaning the ones that they spec out in the
Well,
presentation or the ones that we
they've
have
got
already?
equipment that fits in here. So let's say that, you know, their arm fits in here like this, well, their standard arm fits in here in this tank.
Not a modified on.
But if you make the tank bigger, longer, shorter, whatever,
So you might not be able to use your existing tanks.
That's
I understood that these would be new tanks.
the design they presented us was for a brand new system.
oh, okay.
Okay,
Which had understood from Austin that he had sent them everything.
yeah,
And that, you know, it was my understanding, we were anticipating kind of a preliminary conceptual.
Right,
This is how you could do it with your existing system.
right,
But that's obviously not what happened.
preliminary design. Process design report, but
Yeah,
20-year O&M estimate. That all was in, oh, you didn't get a package, did you?
I've got one. I've got a
Okay.
next one.
Okay,
Austin said he did send everything and resent it again, so he sent it to him twice. And then he also said that the concrete is running really expensive right now. So if the tanks aren't included, that's gonna add a significant cost.
Well,
Is there any chance that the existing tanks could be adapted to?
That's
the
one thing I
new-
wondered.
I'm sorry,
That's one thing I wondered. Can you add on to concrete tanks? Can you make them higher?
I'm assuming you can also add on in the interior if they're too big.
right,
Fill them in.
but I think that's what they did in Berlin, didn't we hear that they?
in one
They-
case, they had one of their outfall things, but the 3 new processing tanks were new.
I thought they said that they had they had a tank and then they
Yeah.
enlarged it by,
They had a round tank.
Right.
we looked at,
Right.
And they made it taller,
correct, that's my point,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
but the processing tanks, the 3 that we walked up to see and
Right,
looked down on, they were all new.
that was my recollection also.
So we have an equalization tank. 2 treatment tanks. And all of the membrane tanks. And the question is, could they be retrofitted? To fill our needs, and therefore we'd just be. Buying their equipment to put in those places, and. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself now, but. After hearing their presentation and being at the Berlin facility, I was thinking, the GHD report talked about hardening the plant by building walls around it.
Mhm.
What if we just built the equipment up high?
Yeah, it's been a question I've had.
Yes,
Right.
and Mark says the same thing, and I can see why after the.
Stick it up in the air.
Right,
I
Right,
would put houses up in the air.
right,
we're gonna be doing that too.
even the office building, elevate that.
Yeah, no, I thought the GMB report, as long as everybody who's tuning in is getting, slammed.
That's not
was-
discriminating.
It's in.
There's nobody watching except for
GM
2 Lewes.
GMB or GHD,
GMB, the original GMB option to harden the
That was
existing GHD
Yeah.
was, just try to build Fort Knox around the sewage treatment plant,
right,
rather than this would be just taller,
yes,
and you'd have to do some engineering calculations to say, gee, if the water got this high, then you'd have these forces from the outside, and oh yeah, the same forces from the inside, no extra,
right,
so the force issues would be all from the inside of the tank when it got full. But I thought that was just hocus, they just ran that price up on that option 1 to make it look terrible, so they could justify something else.
yes,
But the way I understood this was you pretty much have to build a new plant next to it and then transition over. And there might be some piping. But
yeah,
So one of the things, that I wasn't there. So I didn't get a chance to ask all the questions I'm sure I would have asked anything there, but. If. To me, one of the really attractive things about the Aqua Narita approach is the rather simple way that it works. And at least in the literature that we looked at early on, it seems like it's fairly easy to manage it compared to what we've got now.
Yep.
And
yes,
because I think one of the challenges moving forward in time, you can put all the equipment up in the air, but it gets harder and harder to get the people there in and out of the site. Because there are gonna be more days when there's water on the road and yada yada. We joked around about Earl's boat, Earl's not watching, but we have to be realistic about that.
well,
But there's multiple elements, and to me, that was one of the beautiful things about this Aqua Narita system is it seems like it could be almost run remotely.
yes,
I realize it's not gonna be that simple. But then, you guys talked about the Berlin tour, I'm kind of conflating things. And wouldn't it be cool if we cover over the drying beds? That's obviously not something we're gonna be able to do inexpensively.
Well, that, okay. Mark's not here, but I think what he wanted us to see was Aqua Marina, and they have a small batch system. And then Berlin, and I'm sure that another tour could be arranged if you wanted to go over there. Is a small batch system, sort of the same thing.
And it was in a tight space.
In a tight space, built in, and so, I mean, that was an impressive system and a different manufacturer than this, but a very reasonable footprint and our gallons could be managed in something like that.
Because it was actually very close as far as I recall the capacity of that plant in
Yeah.
Berlin to what Lewis's requirements are, correct? Is that what?
Yep.
Yeah,
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 And
yeah,
they,
and
the difference was that they used 3 tanks, filling and processing and so on, but then they decanted or whatever from various levels to their effluent. But they did this, then they did this, then they did this, and now Marina tends to do the whole thing all at once.
but I was disappointed when they came back with the design that said equalization tank. Or influent buffer tank, and then. What was the other
Yeah,
one?
we probably got it from that.
Yeah. So it wasn't quite as simple as I thought it was gonna be, but it's still. Post equalization tank and then sludge buffer.
there was sludge press there too, right?
At Berlin.
Berlin,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That was impressive.
That was,
Squeezing water out.
yeah, it was a belt press,
Yeah,
and they said they got to about 19-20% solids.
yeah.
So-
That kind of cost would have to be weighed against what we pay to. Pay
We-
Sussex.
We had gotten a quote to purchase because we were renting one from Sussex for a while and then they asked for it back. Because they had to have it somewhere else. And then we got a price to get one for ourselves, but then I believe that we held off because we're trying to figure out what option
Right,
we're going
right.
with, you know?
You remember what the cost was?
No, off the top of my head, no, come on.
So Barbara, I get the impression from the things that you said that you're a little disappointed in what you got, how that presentation went. How are you feeling about the technology? Has it changed your perspective on the
No.
technology?
It has, it's just they weren't as prepared as I thought they'd be.
It wasn't.
They were doing like a trunk show, I felt like that. with-
Yeah,
They were
that we,
they were selling us.
And they
Yeah.
were moving, they came to Lewis, did their shtick on, that was a Monday, as I recall. And then they were moving on to some other locations.
Yeah. they were
And
doing their
so-
East Coast.
Right,
road
they're
show.
doing the,
The-
Right.
The impressive thing they had was their modules or whatever that settle fast.
Yes,
And,
yes, that was.
And-
impressive.
That's a key aspect of.
you know,
It's
that
impressive.
helped them, their system.
they
Okay,
said they can run. If you lose power, they said they can run it by a PLC. Yeah, how
What's
does that-
what's PLC? Sorry.
Programmable logic controller, but how,
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that without power.
Battery backup.
Um,
It just means if you get shut down from the main, you can.
If you have no
generate it.
Wi-Fi.
Oh, okay,
You know, the one thing you all correct me, because I could have this all wrong. But didn't we learn at the Berlin facility that they had an existing plant? And then they did their improvements within that,
Yeah.
footprint,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
I sure can.
Right,
Um,
and
just because Austin texted me back, the belt press between 300 and 500,000, depending, new or used.
yeah.
Quite a deal, much better
Yeah,
than what we got.
I mean, right now you're putting, what is it, around 90%?
Let's get two.
Yeah,
It's,
Now, that was an impressive piece of equipment.
yeah.
yes.
Alright, so-
John, are you familiar with the Berlin plant? Have you been there?
I have not, but I am familiar with wastewater.
So this is the
Yeah,
before.
I was,
Okay, so just for
Yeah, this-
orientation, okay,
Here, let's get this out of your way.
we came in here, right?
Mhm.
We went. Their office and so on, and the lab is all up here. We went up here, and these are their 3 reactor tanks, is that right? That's
No, that's
that's
before.
before.
Yeah,
Okay, let's
you,
go back.
you wanna see the other one?
Yeah, let's go back. Or to the other one.
There you go.
Okay,
the drying beds.
Yeah.
so
That's the.
these are their 3
Yes,
reactor
yeah,
tanks.
greenhouses.
This is the one Tim's
Remarkable.
talking about, that they needed a little more capacity, so they built the wall up.
Hold on, I'm
And-
gonna share my screen so Austin can see.
And,
Maybe I am.
they ran the plant in its old fashion to that point, but they come in, they do this. They pump out, they have a filter shed over here somewhere. And then the big greenhouse looking things are their drying beds. And their press is right here, and then they bury it in there and.
So they have both the press and the drying beds.
Right,
Yeah, they got
Undercover.
yes,
They got a press and they put them in, and then they
And then the hospital.
Spread it in here. and let it
And-
sit there for a while.
There were
So there's
little
just glass on
plants
top
growing
and there's air blowing around underneath. There's a just wind running around underneath that
Well,
glass.
there's some circulation, but really, I think they have some fans up on the top.
Okay.
And they're only turning the fans on when it gets too hot.
Yeah.
right,
Mostly they're using the fans to take moisture out and letting the stuff.
right.
They have.
And there was
little-
just a thing,
Basically
excuse me, it
using-
wasn't like a thick wall or, floor of this stuff at all. It was,
3-4 inches.
yeah, if that,
Yeah,
it was remarkable to me.
they had that little, they called it a Volkswagen or
Oh,
something.
yeah, that's right.
Little cart that moved the stuff around.
It's kind of like
They
one
go
of these
straight up.
vacuum
It's just,
cleaners
it's
like
just
you
turning it
have.
over to get
Yeah.
it dryer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It's
just
like a
moves
compost
through
thing.
it, just churn it,
Keep it going.
right,
Yeah,
right.
They do that for compost piles too.
Oh,
Yeah.
Municipal scale compost piles.
Right.
That's something that just goes in.
But I think
runs
the
through it, flips
footprint
it
of
around.
this, everything you see currently there at that plant, as it says after rehab, is I think in the same square footage on the site
Yeah,
as before the rehab. I think, is that what we learned?
Yeah,
Right,
And what is the
And-
size of the site? Is
he
it?
said, between 3 and 5, he was
Okay.
not sure,
So
but it's smaller than
it's
ours.
smaller than-
but it's smaller than ours, right? And yet their load is, their capacity is
a
similar.
little less than.
so Mark's point, if I could put words in his mouth, was you could do that in our site with
Right.
some clever engineering and stuff like that. And you could probably handle the sludge too. And, if you got inundated with a hurricane, the sludge handling would be out the window for a week, but
But I mean, I'm assuming there's a fire drill that the Howard Seymour plant has to do right now whenever there's high water predicted. Right,
Oh,
I think,
yeah.
I remember Austin talking about the fact that
Yeah.
if high water is predicted, that somehow they scoop everything up and they ship it off. If
Yeah.
they can't keep it on the ground.
Most of the time, if they're predicting rain at all, they kind of pile it up as high as they can to keep the sludge on the bottom dry as much as possible. But once it stops, they gotta spread it all out again and it's all wet again, so.
And what you can't tell from here is that where you see the word after rehab, that is basically along the edge of a creek that runs
Oh,
by
yeah,
this
they were in
site.
the ditch, yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
can you see it?
No, you can't see it, but I think it was even, I mean, it was close to the buildings.
yeah.
Okay. but
Okay,
the-
I
but the
never-
dumbest thing they did is then the spray facility
It's miles away.
is, one is 9 and one is 13 miles away.
Yeah, so they laid
Pipe it all
pipe.
there.
And you're
Yeah.
passing, I don't know why, you're passing all these fields on the way out there.
It's remarkable.
Well, it's
I mean, you're
another-
just driving and driving.
And
And you finally get there to, it's
It might
a
be a
field
hyd-
with a forest.
it might be a hydrology problem. It
Huh.
might be a landowner,
Yeah.
you know, nobody wanted to have it there.
Right,
And
Right.
this is the first, I have no idea, I mean.
but
but the expense of laying all that pipe, and then I assume there are pumps associated with
Mm-hmm.
moving that stuff too.
so
Yeah,
a way to think about this, Mike,
it's impressive.
these guys have a technology that is called small batch reactor, right?
Sequencing batch reactor.
Yeah, sequencing, sorry. You could do that. I don't know if Environ is an upgrade to that.
Oh,
Is it a higher level? Is it more expensive? Is it better?
It's new,
It's
certainly,
Newer.
right.
It's probably more effective and newer and more expensive.
So in the original
Yeah.
literature that we got, you know, at the very beginning of this thing, there was some economic comparison between a typical SBR and Aqua Nerita in terms of things like water usage and energy usage and stuff like that. I mean, you know, it's a sales piece, so I don't know how real it all is, but
yes, this one. That you should all have copies of.
right, so can you just, well, you know, because I remember the MBR
That
stuff
was
was in there too.
The 29th of August.
And by the way,
You
with
are
this
making
picture,
work
I
today.
am.
Barbara, have you had so Aqua Nerita, it was my understanding that that was an option, that was gonna be combined with the county. Or was that something Lewis was looking at just by itself?
Something Lewis was looking at, but we were kind of. Wanted the county to know about it because it would be, in terms of operating expense, it's a lot lower than what they're doing. What they're planning.
And did you hear any feedback from the county?
Was Hans there?
Hans
Did
was
Hans-
there, he left a little early.
Yeah, you're right. It originally came up that way, okay, everybody seems convinced to go to Wolf Neck. Maybe the county should look at it. And to say Hans wasn't enthusiastic, that was probably,
understatement.
Well, he
Yeah,
wasn't
true.
enthusiastic before the presentation.
No.
So,
No,
but he came and,
He was polite.
but it sort of has evolved a little bit that Lewis could do this on their own, okay? And Hans could do it if he wants, and maybe the better option for both would be Lewis looks at it as it's what they would have to do here, and Hans looks at, ways to improve the Wolf Neck plant with some new technology,
Right.
because
yeah,
the stated thing about Wolf Neck all the time is it works, it's worked for, 40 years, and there isn't anything better than spray irrigation. That's a summary of many comments, but
So this
this
chart,
seemed to work for the county. too.
this chart as, I mean, there's a shift on the, but I remember
Yes.
this thing.
right,
The lower right-hand corner needs to be brought up one line in order to fit.
yes.
No, sorry.
other
Nothing
way.
that you
No.
can do.
It's not, yeah,
Oh,
Sharon, leave it where it
These
was.
lines I
The,
drew
Oh,
on
the,
the-
gotcha.
the formatting didn't work out on the document, so keep going
Yeah.
down. I remember the bottom corner of this thing.
So for instance.
So the footprint, the
phosphate.
energy consumption, the sludge production, again, this is one technology. Trying to make itself look better against a set of others, but some of those
Right.
numbers, particularly the energy consumption was significant.
Yes, yes.
And I don't have a sense of how that affects the bottom line operation of the plant.
I think that they said in the presentation that where we're gonna see the savings is the energy, wasn't that the big selling point?
Right, and that was,
See if I heard
that
that.
comes from this different sludge settling rate. That was what I got out of everything.
And the other thing is that less chemical use.
Yeah,
Chemical
yeah.
use is only with sludge preparation.
And that was a huge
Yeah.
point that they made, because the
Yeah.
cost of the chemicals has escalated so much recently.
Yeah.
I forget the gentleman, the guy who spoke with us, who walked us around, what
Yeah.
was his name? Is it Mike? Anyway,
I forget to,
yeah,
but yeah,
So
And-
the other thing was footprint. Actually, if I've got this right, the footprint is half.
yes.
The Nareda has a 50% reduction in footprint over the SBR.
That's what they
So if
say.
you look at that
Yeah.
Berlin plant,
Yeah,
you could get conceivably twice as much treatment on our site. If we
Yeah.
went with this, I mean, I realize there's a lot of other variables,
yeah.
but,
the other thing I met, while this image is up here, let me just point one more thing out. Is that on this edge of trees that are, I'm sorry, again, on the bottom part of the photo, in that area there.
Yeah.
There are homes just on this side of that tree line.
Yeah,
And we could actually see where we parked our car. We could actually see some rooftops through the trees. And they indicated that they,
They don't get very many complaints.
Yeah.
And the ones they do are always the same people, like we usually do.
imagine that, yeah. But it's.
once
it's
you
not-
know it's there, it's hard to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not apparently a chronic problem, and so, anyway, I just want to share that with you
now
too.
going back to that other, that's. The other, one
Yeah,
of
that's
the
that back
comparison
there.
one, yeah. Now. Sussex is looking at BNR. Biological nutrient removal activated sludge. So that's their. That's their technology.
And how chemically dependent is that technology?
I don't know.
Shouldn't that be one of our questions as we go forward, is to really figure out?
That's interesting.
Donna, can you speak to that at all? Because you don't want to, you can't.
Yeah, I don't-
both.
It's interesting that they left out the line that was part of the analysis below between the chemical and biological comparison. It's not there.
yeah, the phosphorus removal,
Well, I guess they're,
yeah. Maybe they don't do phosphorus removal.
they have to.
No, they don't there, because, at least in Berlin, because they don't have to. For whatever reason. But that doesn't mean we would do.
We,
Well, it's-
Wolf Creek though, do they have to?
yeah, we do. It's,
I think the standards in Maryland are. They're pretty robust, aren't they? Isn't that what
Yeah.
they spoke to?
Yeah,
it'll
but we're
depend on
getting
the,
the two.
it'll depend on the
confused.
watershed. and all
BNR
that.
versus
okay.
SBR.
Okay.
So I guess having not been a part of either the Nareda or the tour, how do we proceed? How do we sort this all out?
You're jumping in.
Okay,
Do you have a,
Right enough, Barbara.
do you have a plan?
Good job.
well, no, I mean, I mean, it's all kind of spinning around in my head right now. I'm just
Yes, I think, well, how we proceed is. I will ask the engineers among us. To look at the process design report
Okay, Is that the reason one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna get that from Sharon.
Yeah. And at our next meeting, hopefully Mark will be here, and hopefully by then we'll have some answers from the aqua aerobics systems people about whether this would fit in our footprint and how much that affects the design costs and equipment costs.
But I'm also assuming that that's fitting within the existing system, but also like what Berlin did, being able to concurrently run the plant.
Oh,
while
yes.
Shoehorning in the new stuff.
Yes,
Okay.
that's a given. Because they would use the existing system to grow the little sludge balls or the little.
Right,
But,
enzymes.
but in anywhere is that addressed with raising the system?
Yes. That would be a whole different. Some of the raising the system would occur because we'd be building the tanks up.
Okay.
But, and we haven't finished really the Berlin discussion, but they pointed out the pumps they have in the part of the building under the tanks were all pumps that can run in water. Right?
They're immersible type.
Immersible pumps. So that's a difference we could do to harden the plant, have your pumps on the lower level and they can operate when you're flooded. Yeah.
This
during
image
the
shows how close the houses are to the tree line.
Mhm,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So really, I don't think we're at a point where we would recommend one technology over another until we get more information back from Aqua Aerobic, and then also have the engineers in our group and look at.
So I will say one thing about the pumps being in water.
Uh-huh,
There's a difference between just being a submersible pump and being a submersible pump in salt water.
I wondered about that. As soon as I said it, I wondered that.
You want to talk to us about that, please?
Well, so if you have salt water going through a pump, it's gonna be a different system than just fresh water going through a pump.
Mhm.
Your pumps are gonna have to be maintained differently. It's just a higher level.
Would that
Well,
maintenance be
except that-
done after they?
Except you might have salt water for a couple of days, but I mean. If we're not gonna be processing salt water,
Correct.
Wait,
I mean, if there's a huge storm. And we
Right.
get 8 to 10 feet of water. What Austin's gonna do is shut off the inbound pumps. Particularly from the beach side. Shut off. Anything that. Is likely to put salt water in. So he could continue to process.
And not even worry about it.
But
Yeah.
what you.
So there might be salt water there, but presumably 3 days later, there won't be salt water.
But if we think about all of the.
Because
stuff
it goes back. in
It was received.
Oh, I
After a big
understand the
storm, yeah.
receipts, but it would still be in the sewer line.
No, because the whole plan that has come up out of the other committee that
Mitigation
Barbara's on
committee.
is quickly shut down the input.
Oh, I understand I heard that also. Right, okay.
But
But
I took-
but there are manholes, right? Let me just finish up with that. and then you clarify. There are manholes in that system, in that collection system throughout the beach area. And every manhole is an opportunity for salt water to get through the manhole into the system.
Don't flush.
Into
toilet,
those,
shut it.
into those vulnerable pieces of electrical equipment that need to be running all the time.
Right, and I'm sorry, may I jump on?
No, I mean,
My question is that the exposure to salt water, is that something that is mitigated by a thorough cleaning after that exposure, or do you buy equipment that's rated for saltwater and also not saltwater?
I'm assuming you would buy equipment for both, but I can't answer that. I can't speak to the maintenance and functionality of a plant on that level. I just know like on a boat, if you're gonna buy a pump and you're in a lake, it's a different pump than if you're going both between lake and brackish water.
Right,
And the general, specter of sea level rise would suggest that as time goes by, more and more of the time, even outside of storms, these things will be immersed in salt water. The groundwater will become more standing under the
Right.
site, given its proximity to the canal, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think we should just fixate on the storms. We have to think about how the salinity will
Right.
affect basic operation if we've got things that are below the water line under the site. So I think it's a really important point that you're making.
Yeah.
It's no small step to have these submersible pumps in a saline environment.
Well, I just thought of it because you were saying that Berlin, it can operate with, underground, with groundwater, but their groundwater flooding and ours is two different
very
things.
different,
Different.
Yes,
very different, good point.
yeah.
You can tell I'm from Kansas.
Well, they're not that far
Cut
from
your
salt
heels.
water.
I have, it doesn't work.
I mean, Donna, they're not that far. They're not Lewes, but they're not
They're not
super far from
Ask
salt water.
is right there.
If you. Going forward, okay, you're gonna get some answers from both these companies and so on. I imagine you're looking at spending some actual money to say, yes, we could do this, here's a cost estimate for doing option A or option B, or whichever you want. In this plan, or in this footprint. And I don't know what an engineering, how much did they spend on all that stuff?
Yeah. I don't remember.
Yep.
But we have not been authorized to spend.
No, I know we haven't been
Right.
authorized, but I think you're gonna end up asking for it.
Right, at some point.
Because you're gonna say, we can do this or this here, and I would argue that it might be money well spent. Because then you have a realistic option that you can negotiate with the county about,
Mhm.
and you can say, well, we can do this, or, you want our outfall, it's a very expensive outfall.
Because we're still thinking that the relationship, the interconnectivity between the two would exist, even if the city maintained its own system and they
Yes.
complete, right?
I think it's a reasonable thing to have that connection. I mean, my sense is from things that Austin said about the water thing, you're building more and more interconnections.
Right.
Just as a contingency.
Exactly.
Um,
I think-
you know,
And I mean, it seems to me, if nothing else, what should be considered is the idea of the valve that's out here off of Gills Neck Road that only allows stuff to move in one direction. That could be changed out. It's real simple to do plumbing.
Just put it in Home Depot, they've got it in town.
And then so that it can in fact flow the other direction. And then that becomes an opportunity. I'm in over my head.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. But I'm gonna continue. Don't stop me now.
Probably need another pipe all the way down.
Well, what I'm thinking is that would that not relieve the construction site if we were to do this upgrade on the existing site? If the valve work was done on Gills Neck Road that I'm suggesting.
For a period of time, you pumped in that direction.
Right.
before.
And then this site, not that site, but our site would be in effect dormant during a large phase of the construction.
That's an idea.
I assume to do this construction, it doesn't happen quickly. It takes some real time to put it together. How long did it take to do that?
They had that done in less than 2 years.
Yeah, I think from the time they put the
Yeah.
stuff on the ground, I think it was less than 2 years.
Right,
Okay.
and it remained active the whole time.
Yeah.
They didn't close
They
that
weren't,
down.
they weren't shipping it off. They were just running.
No,
Okay.
no.
This,
They were
this
off-
is operating right now in
Yeah.
this construction.
I mean, it was amazing. Think about it.
So the study that recommended Aqua Narita, when was that study done?
There was not a study that recommended it.
Oh, okay.
That's
That was-
Barbara.
That was Barbara.
Yeah, and I just,
Looking for options,
Okay.
yes,
and she identified it,
yeah,
I mean, it speaks to
right,
sort of like your question about the, bifurcating the waste and keeping the, the existing discharge to the canal. And then as we need more processing and more discharge, we put it in irrigation. Just something that says we don't have to have such an expensive reworking of everything. We can, we can move pieces around a little more piecewise rather than everything being exchanged.
Well, the other thing to say is that since the original study in options 1 through 6 or whatever it was, the county's
mhm,
options have changed.
Yeah.
Rather significantly.
Yeah.
So,
right,
it might be. Either of these might be a good thing for the county.
Yeah.
To consider. Or, it might be a good thing for Lewes to consider.
I think one thing about the Narita technology, going back to the salt water issue, is that it appears to be more resistant to salinity than most.
Or influence salinity, like
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
process water.
Yeah,
So,
more resilient, quicker to recover.
and that was one of my questions, if I'd been able to attend, since they have so few functioning plants. How many of their plants actually have had saltwater intrusion on a regular basis?
Their biggest plant does in Dublin, and we
Okay.
all want to go on that.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're
And
gonna
it's
say,
not intrusion on a regular basis or
Yes.
just, and here and there?
She said she's going to get us more information about that.
It's,
She also pointed to the fact that, on a lesser basis, in Hong Kong, they flush the toilets with salt water.
Saltwater.
Yeah. But,
how about in the Netherlands, don't they have,
that's where the salt comes from, it's the Netherlands.
right,
If
and
they can do it there.
right, that's what I'm thinking too. Yeah, I mean, they have plants there too,
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
they're-
yes.
right,
They're bounding it.
exactly,
But my experience in Holland is that they're using fresh water too. Holland is pumping fresh water all the time out into the ocean. They have
treated
lot-
fresh
they-
water,
To
Yeah,
lower
they
the
have-
the water
They,
table.
and they have a water table that's up here,
Right.
so they're constantly.
I see what you're
They're not separating salt water so they can pump it, use it. And save fresh water, they're pumping. All the time with pumps that are about the diameter of this room. To get water out.
yeah,
Well, maybe we should put that on our tour also.
I think so, I like that. Sharon's booking the trip.
Sure am.
No, I thought you were talking about Dublin, Ohio.
Or Maryland, Dublin, Maryland.
Is there a Dublin, Maryland?
I thought there was.
I didn't
Yeah,
know.
there's a lot to learn
There is.
and,
Or is it Pennsylvania?
and probably. Another come back together with options and make sense of this. Make sense of this for Lewis, but then what the county is really gonna be proposing.
And are we expecting actually the county to be working new proposals? is that a fair expectation?
The county hired GHD to do a study of what it would cost for the ocean outfall. But that's the only thing I'm aware of.
And has that been labeled 3C? Is that the 3C analysis?
I think it might be,
Okay.
yeah. So,
And that would be a joint Lewis County 3.5 million gallon
No, that would,
to the
well, that
ocean
would
thing.
be pumping to Wolf Neck.
Right.
And then Wolf Neck. out to the
Right, but that's what I'm talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
that's taking all of our waste and sending it
Yes.
to Wolf Neck and then treating it there and then discharging it to the ocean somewhere.
yes,
I'm assuming 3.5 million gallons a day.
And that discharge would not be in the same location as the Rehoboth.
I don't think
is that
it's right.
correct?
they talked about a mile or so away.
Yeah.
Don't know.
And do we have any idea when that study is scheduled to be completed?
I think at the last board meeting, they said it was supposed to be this month,
During November.
yeah.
That
Well, they
won't
were-
include the assimilative study that you were referring to earlier.
I doubt it. And I think they're just looking at if this,
Feasibility.
what is the feasibility and therefore what are the
Right.
actual costs, and that would be design study.
So, yeah. So did we look at all the pictures from Berlin? Oh, yeah, that shows them all together. So existing before, rehab after, and
Yeah.
Hmm.
That place was very well managed as far as everything seemed to be in its place and
yes.
very clean, very orderly.
Didn't smell so hot when we first got.
No, that
Uh,
was, yeah, I would have been on the phone. If I lived where those trees are,
Yes, yes.
I would have been calling it.
But I didn't smell
Lower-
it when I pulled up. I only smelled it when we went in
Yeah.
that first
And
building.
dude, when you got home, what was the first thing you did?
Oh, I
Take,
just
take a shower?
got in my bed.
They take honey dippers there.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
Yeah.
make money,
We
lots of
we
money.
do that, don't we?
no.
I don't
No.
think so. I don't think so.
No, they, what did they tell us at Walmart
I was gonna
there?
say the same thing.
Yes.
That was very interesting.
Was that?
Yeah, they take all of theirs
$60,000, wasn't it a month?
a month.
So
They have
your
like a
income.
septic system at Walmart, or they've got a pipe system that can.
No.
They truck it in.
They truck it in and they pay Walmart, they truck and deliver 1 week and the next week there's a check for 60-some thousand dollars from Walmart each
Mhm.
month.
Mhm.
So that's what they're making just from that one customer.
Right.
And they just dump it into the manhole, they said, right outside the
Right
plant.
outside, yeah.
Yeah.
The lower part is where the.
I mean, we could show it to you right there on the map, right?
Yeah.
You're
there.
not suggesting that we find a similar client like that, are you?
You know,
I'm just saying there's money to be made in that stuff.
Oh,
No, Walmart had its own system and I think that they need a new system and I think this
Yeah.
is the temporary solution.
Yeah.
Oh, I had not heard
Mhm.
that part. Okay.
See,
Huh.
but when you look at that top rendering, it shows you how high up the tanks are.
mhm. Yeah, it's a little easier to do it in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that was a climb, I don't know,
Yeah,
Yeah, it was,
3 or 4 stories.
yeah.
no more than 3.
So fortify the tanks, fortify the individual pieces rather than the
Yes.
whole site.
Yeah.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
Sumner.
Right, if that site got flooded. you know,
Exactly.
you'd lose
I mean, the
bank,
drying beds are gonna go.
Yeah.
Drying beds and the
But-
office.
Oh.
Let me ask you about that with the drying beds, and I hadn't thought of this until this conversation today. In the event of a major storm, if there were similar drying beds here under roof. The fact that you can put a garage door in effect on the end of the building, and wouldn't that help keep what's inside the beds dry? And
Not if there's water pushing up against the
Yeah,
garage
right.
door.
You probably lose the whole building,
you think so?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
depending on the course of the
I mean,
water.
it depends on the depth of the water and all that, but I don't think that garage doors are probably what you wanna have holding back a foot of water.
I would
Okay.
think if you thought you were gonna get it flooded, you would just open the garage door.
Right.
And let it
And you
flood
would
through.
drive, you would empty those beds, open the garage
Right.
doors.
So empty the
Let
beds
the water
before the
run through.
event
You-
and
The
then
last thing you want, Tim,
flush it.
the last thing you
Yeah.
want is for
Okay.
water to get in there and not be able to get out.
Right.
That's when things break.
Right,
Mm.
I understand your
And,
point.
and,
Okay.
and we had this conversation before, we had a part of the answer to your question before you got here. Because I think Sharon mentioned how cool it was to see all the glass, or maybe Barbara. So I went over and talked to Robin, what would be the possibility of us doing that here? Berlin is far enough back from the ocean that it's not subject to National Building Code based wind requirements. We're in, Howard Seymour's in a hurricane zone, which requires 120 mile an hour. That was the figure I think I heard Robin say. 120 mile an hour rating. I don't think that,
That
had that
structure,
requirement.
yeah, got it.
so that would be considerably more expensive here.
Yes.
But if it were feasible, it would be really cool. I'm assuming the drawing would work a lot more effectively.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, much, very,
Do you remember how long they said it took for when they put it out? I can't
Yeah.
remember. It was just days.
yeah, it was not a long
How long
period,
does it take here?
Long time.
weeks.
Weeks.
Weeks. Yeah.
Mostly
Now-
we're pumping out liquid
Yeah,
now
yeah.
and taking to the county.
Right,
Now, help me understand, because somewhere along the line in the regular wastewater treatment facility public meetings, I got the impression that county has the ability to take our sludge.
They do,
Yes.
they do.
They do
And-
now.
We,
But
we
they-
have an agreement now with them and they do.
So are they taking it all?
For the
Almost
most part of it.
Yeah.
So how important is this drying bed
Right. now.
piece of the equation?
I don't think that they use it very frequently.
No,
Okay.
No, the only, well, I'm guessing, but
that's.
the
actually
thing
a
was,
lot.
if you bought the press machine,
Right,
okay, so you don't end up with, tank trucks full of sludge going down the highway, but you end up with a truck
A solid
that
structure.
is largely dewatered,
Mhm.
and it's, far less frequent, I mean, you're talking about one a day, or
Right, so that's an economic analysis between
Yeah.
spending the money on the
you
press.
take it down to the
Is
county.
that- yeah. that's
Austin
good.
said the solids handling agreement covers both solid and liquid, so the county takes both.
Okay.
Yeah, but. you
And
you
that's a
probably don't want
long-term-
Fleet of,
That's a long-term thing rather than just some sort of interim deal.
I don't remember how long the agreements were. Austin, do you know, 3 years? Yes, long term.
Okay,
It's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
where do we go?
Okay.
So is it,
That's
po-
another fact,
Yeah.
I mean, to be considered.
Yes.
What, the drawing bed thing?
No, that the county, we have a long-term agreement with the county to take liquids or solids.
Mhm. Right,
and,
So we're not trying to also, on top of this, evaluate disposal options in the matrix of evaluating, methodology A versus methodology B.
you could buy the press machine and send them the solids, and you got a very small footprint.
Mhm.
and is it possible to go directly from the press to hauling it off site? Is that
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
doable?
it empties
Is that-
into a.
Well, I think so, I
roll-off
mean, they
container.
pump, they take solid, I mean, liquids offsite now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
So, I mean, that would be a very small footprint out here.
Yes. Yes.
right,
So if you stated that option as pick a small batch approach here, evaluate that, buy a press, and send that to the county directly on a routine basis.
So, if you go like Berlin, you're suggesting we go like Berlin, do a small batch process. The first question that comes to mind in my mind is,
Oh,
Can
you're
we do
talking
that?
sequencing batch.
or the SBR.
No,
No,
I'm saying
no.
either something like. You know, Pac-Man Narita or sequencing batch, but
Yeah.
either way, you look at that picture and. You know, you're not talking about a lot of.
Right.
You're talking
Yeah.
maybe high,
Right.
but it could
High
be done,
is to our benefit.
Absolutely.
it could be done in our. Footprint over here.
Right,
Yes, I think it could. It's a question of cost.
right.
You can do anything. It's just a question of.
Yeah.
Spoken like an engineer.
Yeah.
But you know, we have a new, well, we're having a new headworks.
Correct.
So that's one.
And that speaks to the point, I wish I could remember the guy who walked with us around. I wanna say his name was Mike. Do you remember the big guy?
I thought it was Jimmy, but
Jimmy Bob Boy Mike, yeah, that's what his name. And one of the points he
You write that
stressed
down?
was- yeah. Yeah, with attribution, I hope. Yes. One of the points that he stressed to us was the idea of the great economy by not re-engineering the site or moving it to a new location, because your headworks are already there. All that
Right,
plumbing is already on the site, and why abandon that? You know, if it's, you know, it's working, that's a
Right.
lot of capital that you don't have to reinvest.
What's the timing of the new headworks? That's something we must do regardless of whatever we do in the
Yes.
future.
that's next year.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we've already got.
that's a
we've already got
Serious
the
capital
funding.
investment.
Yeah. the
Yeah.
Funding.
I
would
think it's going out for bid. Did it go?
think,
I don't know, I was on the last meeting.
But we do have the funding.
Yeah.
I think. With the SBR sequencing batch reactor versus the Narita, I think you get a higher quality. Out of the Narita material after the filtration, because they didn't have to worry about phosphorus, right? Yeah.
Headworks is already awarded M2. That's right.
Okay.
And equipment is ordered, so.
So the Narita process has that advantage.
Right, I mean, in the back of my mind, in all of this sort of juggling these different pieces is. We don't want to go backwards in terms of the quality we're delivering to whatever receiving waters, right?
Correct. Correct.
So. That's got
But
to
with,
be kept in mind.
with the SBR, you can do, some additional treatment. To take. your
which is what they
nutrients.
call the filters and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
Well, that was my understanding for Narita, and
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
that they
Phil-
included the extra steps that we would want to have the same quality.
So they were basically
Sure.
pushing a product that would deliver an adequate quality, but it wouldn't necessarily
It-
meet
it-
the quality
it
we
would-
have right now.
It would meet the standards required, but it would not meet what we expect,
Right,
we
Right,
want.
or the state expects, I mean,
No, it would,
No.
it would meet the state
Requirement
requirements, but we
limits.
go above and beyond.
right,
right.
okay.
And so in order to do that, we would have to buy the additional rag, the
Right,
disc,
it was the one with the
With
vinyl
this.
top,
yeah,
right, yeah.
yeah, which the SBR had that as well.
yes.
And they said, and I asked about the maintenance, and they only clean those once a year.
And yeah, they even said it doesn't even need it
Yeah,
that frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of made, I had a question leaving that site that day, wondering, is it possible that the existing membrane system could be used to do that same job? Yeah,
Right. We
Yeah.
don't have to
does that make sense
Yeah,
at
yeah.
all?
We've already got.
Yeah,
the
we already
system.
own it, we may, know, right?
yes, but that's what costs so much for
So
us
much
to
money.
operate.
Yeah,
That is why we don't want to go back with that. I mean,
we would like to get rid of the NBR because.
Does
it
that have
is-
any resale value? You can,
You Put it on eBay.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I wouldn't,
possible.
I wouldn't think so, because it's expensive to operate.
It's
Well-
more commonly used in water treatment. than in wastewater treatment.
I noticed you.
So is
talked
that like for
to-
pharmaceuticals? I'm cleaning up my water to start making pharmaceuticals or something.
Yeah, or water treatment plants, municipal water treatment plants.
Right,
And,
there are plenty of municipal water treatment plants that pull water out of a river.
Out of a
It's not
river
exactly
or a
clean.
well, I bet you
Yeah.
there's a
Said
market.
lead times or months, they may have some resale value.
Yeah, I bet there's a market for them.
To market for everything.
That's right, Tom.
That's true.
I recognize your handle from eBay.
But so we've got all that space inside that building.
Right,
Yeah,
well, it's nice to have options.
so next steps, I think the next meeting, we want to make sure we have all our engineers on the committee in attendance and having reviewed the proposal or the preliminary design report. And talk a little bit more about next steps, because we need a more robust discussion first, I think.
Can I make a suggestion that we just take a Google map of our site aerial and plunk down a couple of these tanks? Just for comparison, I mean, just stick them in the
Oh, yeah.
parking lot,
That's an idea.
but so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, just looking interesting.
You know, I mean, these
those-
at least
that-
have
that-
dimensions on them.
I'm
And-
just really surprised. Of course, I missed the presentation also. I'm just really surprised in their presentation. They didn't bring that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was,
I think.
Yeah.
You should tell these people to, adequately evaluate. We need some things from you. I mean, Austin gave them all their information. They have everything available to them to give us a realistic proposal.
yeah, here's Howard Seymour. Keep Howard Seymour working. Plunk down 2 tanks or 3 tanks over here,
right,
put in a valve there.
what was the date of that meeting that we had with them, Barbara,
23rd.
the 23rd?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, okay,
And the tour was the 25th.
Yes,
Yes.
right, so this would actually be their second full week back in the offices, right?
yes, yeah.
So, yeah, be appropriate to hit them up now,
I think you're
Yeah.
right,
and
yeah.
and we're on a short, we have to report out by the end of the year, isn't that right? Or
January 31st.
by the end of, okay, in the January, so we,
So
Yeah.
Barbara, did you have a date for the next meeting in mind?
No. We usually figure them out while we're all here with our calendars, but without Mark, I think, maybe Sharon, if you could send out,
Okay.
yeah,
Do you have an idea of what week? And then we can,
How long would it take you to review the materials that have been described? I'm assuming.
Okay.
Given what you've said, the most important thing is that the engineers in the group have a chance to look at it and sort of be able to comment.
You're talking about the Narita presentation.
yeah.
right? A week. We're done.
and,
I'm gonna get that from Sharon today, so.
and Bob, have you had a chance to look at the Narita, go through it, as an engineer?
Not as an engineer.
Okay, kind of winging it, huh?
he listened, he
Yeah.
listened.
I listened.
Kind of like this
and
little arts major over
and-
here.
I think I understood, but,
This one here too.
Let's talk about the philosophy. Okay? Wastewater treatment.
but when do you like?
Friday the 17th.
Where are we in? We're in
We're in
November? or December?
November.
Oh, I was in December.
Oh.
No.
Sorry.
No, we're doing it before
Don't do
Christmas.
that.
Yeah,
Can we
I
push
haven't
it,
done my
can we push it
shopping.
into, or like the next, like Monday or Tuesday next week? I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna be available at 17.
I'm away that week for a conference. Not that you need me, but,
Oh,
we
it's
do
not the
need
same
you.
as that, you can.
and Austin will be off the entire next week.
Of the 20th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And-
Oh, that's Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving week.
Okay. Are you here any part of the week of the 13th? Some,
Yeah, I think probably from midday, at least on the 15th through the 17th, I'm probably not gonna be available.
you're out of pocket, okay. How
I
about
mean,
you,
I'm
Donald?
critical to this.
What about the
I'm-
14th?
I could do the afternoon of the 14th.
I could do the same.
That's,
Me too.
Is that, is that?
What
enough
time?
To do,
Yes, I'd have to send it out tomorrow.
well, we want to see if Mark's available, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can do the afternoon, like 3, 13th or 14th.
We couldn't do the 13th because I can't get the agenda out in a time.
Okay.
yeah, and we're not doing the 13th, because I have a meeting that evening.
Okay, so it's the 14th at whatever time.
Right,
Well, Sumner, you said afternoon, right?
yeah.
That's okay with me.
all right, so,
3 o'clock. If Mark can make it.
okay, so we're gonna touch base
And
with
I'll-
Mark and let them drive the time, is that right?
Yeah,
So it'd be sometime in the afternoon,
But
You
just
wanna
the,
pick one beyond that?
yes.
as a rain date kind of thing,
Well, I was thinking more like do the 14th, like you said, and then, you know, very quickly you're in December.
right,
Yeah,
okay, so. So so the 14th would be the first choice, the second choice you're saying would be the Wednesday, is that what you're suggesting, Bob?
We're just saying to pick the.
I was
I'm sorry.
picking
The
the
next meeting.
Meeting after that,
next meeting after that.
just to get the scheduling done.
yeah,
Oh, okay, so then, all right. So we're looking at December then,
December 1st, Friday.
no, I guess you can't predict if that's gonna be our only meeting in December, right?
I hope that wouldn't be our only. meeting.
Okay. I can do December 1st.
I can too.
I don't know if this applies, I have, I can do the first, but I do have. I don't know how this got here, but I have a meeting at 2 o'clock on the first.
Oh,
So, and I would give it, I'm giving myself an hour for that meeting. But, otherwise I'm available.
So Thanksgiving is the 28th?
23rd.
and the 3rd.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Oh, I'm in December, sorry.
you know,
So what day are you saying? The 24th or the 1st?
The 1st
of
of
December,
December,
December, okay. I think we can do that.
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock?
and you'll confirm this with Austin and also with Mark before we really button this down, right?
Yeah. And I think the agenda will be continuation of.
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
I think it's gonna be harder as we get into December.
yes,
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I think I will start. Should be up on the read of people,
yes,
yeah.
let them feel some of our pain.
Yes.
Well, Barbara, do you wanna talk to them? Because. I mean, my initial reaction, I wasn't there, but from what I'm hearing. There's not really enough hard numbers to even really evaluate. A and B.
Right, if you think
Yeah.
about where we need to be by
Yeah.
January 31st. There's a lot we need to fill in.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not opposed to a meeting on the 14th, but. So we have a number from them at 3.5 million plus tanks. The engineering shouldn't be that big of a deal, but we don't know Is that a finished product meeting our levels, or we need more
Yes.
phosphorus?
No,
What
no.
about, we need more phosphorus removal, right?
That's from the filters. That takes care of the phosphorus. The report that you will get to see is pretty detailed. It's just a question of where all the equipment goes and how that affects the price. Let's see.
Which brings me back to the question you asked earlier about, is there a way to sort of provide a fairly quick and dirty suggestion as to how we could shoehorn all the equipment they think we need on
Well,
our
they
site
did.
while we have what we've got on the
Right.
site.
Because they had a tour of the plant.
Yeah.
And they know what levels we're meeting. So.
Yeah, how do we get
This is
there?
their
What's gonna
technology,
take,
they
what's,
need to.
what's
be
it gonna
able to-
take for us to
Yeah.
get there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are all the pieces that need to be in place in order to be able to meet the water quality requirements that we have in place now with your technology, right?
Yes. So are you suggesting we see if they can join us, Zoom into the meeting on the 14th?
No, I'm suggesting you find out how quickly they can give us that information. And then potentially schedule that meeting. If they're gonna get it to us in the next week.
Yeah.
Then, you know,
And it makes sense to have the meeting on the 14th. I wrote down the numbers. They said that with the polishing. The disc filters, the parameters we would meet. And. Total nitrogen. He said 3.
This is
I couldn't read it.
this is a concentration of 3 milligrams per liter. What is 3?
Yeah, milligrams per liter. Our permit limit is 8. Total phosphorus, our permit limit is 2. They said, they could get down to less than 0.1
with their process or with their process plus.
with their process plus the
The filter.
filters,
Okay.
plus the filters.
But the 3.5 million does not include the filter.
Yes, it does.
It does, okay.
Yes,
Okay, that's where I was missing something.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. For the total suspended solids, our permit limit is 15 and they can get down to less than 5. BOD permit limit is 15 and again, less than 5. So, it's good stuff.
Did they, in the presentation, acknowledge any place where they didn't think they could beat the competitors?
No,
No, but
Okay,
it was
they
a
would.
sales presentation.
yes,
Yeah, that's,
yes.
sounds a little too good to be true.
They gave us numbers without the discs. And that would be total nitrogen of 3. Oh, and they didn't give us total nitrogen with the discs. The 3 was, without the filters. Total phosphorus was 1 versus less than 0.1. Total suspended solids were 10, which is still within permit limits, but
10.
yeah. 10 and BOD was also 10, which is within permit limits, but so the polishing does quite a bit.
So you've talked about how there's permit limits and then there's what we're discharging now. Do you know what those numbers are?
Yep, that's
Yeah.
why I just asked 10.
Yes.
The TSS, it looks to be less than 0.9.
Really?
Yes. And the BOD is less than 2.7. Now we're right on for the total nitrogen and total phosphorus.
3?
2.23. And 0.94 for the phosphorus. That's the average.
Wow, 0.94.
Yes.
Okay. That's what you're doing now. So
Mhm.
you,
This was last month's report.
This is what comes from this expensive to operate BNR
Yes.
plant
Correct.
Yes.
is, or MBR plant, this is why
MBR.
we have this plant.
Mhm.
I mean, the whole time we've been talking today, I've been thinking, I wish I knew how it was that we ended up with this plant.
Yeah,
I think
that,
there's an
that-
explanation my neighbor offered for that. Who was the former president of the BPW at the time that plant was rehabilitated. And the explanation, I believe, was that there was they were operating under a serious threat of suit from the EPA. And in effect, the EPA made the decision for the board.
Strongly encouraged?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I was working at EPA at the time and EPA was being sued by a bunch of environmental organizations
Right.
all over the country
Right,
for not meeting all these
exactly.
requirements. And so, the whole TMDL thing, every time we talked about TMDLs, that's why Rehoboth is now discharging the ocean. They could never meet the requirements that EPA was expected to meet.
I think I'm properly representing what my neighbors told me.
Right, and that's what I figured. It had to do with the TMDL lawsuits that were like in the 2000 time frame.
Well,
Yeah,
nice.
this
but
would've been
there is a
several years
question as
later.
to whether, so you've got what's allowed, and you've got what we put out
Right.
currently. And if you try to beat that, you're gonna. You're not gonna spend a lot of money.
Yeah, we're
Right.
not gonna beat what we're putting out
If
now.
you're. And is it important that you beat it? Not, some people would say. Yes, and some people would say no, depending on.
But I guess my question as someone, just new to all this. If this is what Lewes is doing now,
Mhm.
and then we heard the parameters of the NPDS permit, what is the objective? What does Lewes want to meet? What we're doing now? Or do we want to meet the permit, or is it somewhere in between?
The GHD study predicts that as our flow rate, as our flow volume increases, we will not get those same,
The current
the
Values.
current values,
Okay.
the current effluent quality, that it will approach the permit limits.
Okay, so are these
using MDR.
limits,
Yes,
are these limits pretty much what you see in the summertime also?
I'd have to look.
Yeah, so went down this road looking at some of this stuff, and we're already bumping up against those limits at certain
In certain
certain
months,
maximum flow
like
times and
June,
so on.
July, August.
But so my really rough and dirty look at all the wastewater treatment facility meetings is the county's counting on connecting with us, building up a 3.5 million gallon facility fitting within the existing NPDS limits as set by EPA and DNR. But doing it with a much higher flow rate. So the loadings will be higher, much considerably higher than they are now. So absolutely, that's the question. Are we willing to live with that limit, or do we want to stay where we are in terms of the discharge that we're putting in the canal?
And Sharon, what did you find in your search of records?
So for July, the month of July, phosphorus was 0.42. Nitrogen, total nitrogen was 4.37. BOD was less than 2.5. And TSS, where are you at? Less than 1.1.
Those are average numbers.
Average.
average, yeah.
Yep.
So
But there are days that,
is there a column with maximum numbers?
There is. Which
so
one?
what were the maximums in July?
So
Just curiosity,
Phosphorus 0.66.
0.66.
Nitrogen 4.37.
Oh, wow.
BOD was 2.5. And TSS 2.8.
So there was one I looked at where the maximum was 8. I don't remember where that was. It was in.
What do you think of that, Donna?
Well, the maximum and the average numbers are not that different.
Yeah,
So now I am looking at. Am I supposed to be looking at, because I don't know, the load or per liter? Because I gave you per milligrams per liter. That's what I gave you.
That would be.
they're both relevant.
Okay. But I don't know what numbers we were comparing to.
Those were all milligrams per liter. Those
Okay.
numbers were all
Right.
milligrams per
Okay.
So are August numbers that different?
Those first numbers I gave you, I believe were August.
Those are
Yeah, because I
August.
pulled them from September.
Okay, okay.
So we're consistent, is that correct, regardless of the
Well,
number of gallons,
the-
the
the-
volume?
yes, but the big difference in these numbers. The only one with some significant difference is the TSS. Because in August numbers were 0.9, and the high number in July was 2.8, but the average was 1.1. Everything else is pretty consistent.
This is a test, Donna. What is TSS, please?
Total dead solids.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure you were getting it. All right, so we'll hear from you tomorrow as far as the
Yes.
dates, right?
Yes. I will. Oh, do you have Mark's number? I don't think I have Mark's number. I have his email. It might be in his email,
Let's see if I have it.
and I'll just give him a call.
She had it too.
He was picking his daughter up from the airport. That's why he couldn't make it today.
So, here's a table in the
I
GHG
don't have it.
report.
Okay.
On page 7,
No, I'll look at
which
it myself.
has the total, the effective, the effluent nutrient data from January 2021 to September 21. And, for nitrogen, for example, the average is 5.6, minimum is 3.5, the average is 5.6, the maximum is 7.7. And the limit is 8. Phosphorus, the minimum is 0.05 milligrams per liter, the average is 0.59, maximum is 1.66, and the limit is 2.
Okay.
So the table is there, you can look at, we just did a sample of 1 month here. Here's a broader sort
Okay,
of array of
thank you.
data that represented in this table, that made
Okay.
it useful. And there were no exceedances to the permit limits. It's noted at the bottom of this, it's table 6 in the, I think this is like the executive summary. So it's right up front in the document.
That's available online.
It is.
Right.
I'll have to print it.
Yeah, I know, right? But the
That's
problem with
the-
printing it, some of the, yeah, it comes out so small. Get
Could
up
we
on
run
that.
that off for Donna, actually make a copy for her?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, okay,
Sharon can do that for you,
Yep.
save your printer.
yeah.
She'll handle it.
Okay, do I have a?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.